So next up is our cable department, and we're approaching 4 o'clock. We were scheduled till 5. There is no end time today, so as long as you guys want to stay, I think conceivably we can do that. I just, as Sandeep comes up, I do want to say that we potentially have a nice natural stopping point if we get through the enterprise departments and internal service funds, we can stop before capital, which is slide 183. And right now, we're approaching 157. Numbers actually don't equate to the breadth of the conversation. And so if we can do that, or we could try and get through all of it. If we pause at capital, what we would do is on June 11th, we have a 5:30 budget retreat. We would have the conversation for capital then. And so my recommendation is that we keep going till about 5, see where we get, and then pick up with capital hopefully on the 11th. I'll turn it over to Sandeep.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor, members of the Council. It is my pleasure to present the Cable Department's budget for 2019-20, starting with a description of the Cable Department itself. As an organization and a commercial entity with the city of San Bruno, it's been in existence for 47 years. It currently has 20 full-time employees and has a range of products and services on offer to the community, which include broadband services which comprise both internet as well as a suite of video offerings. The organization is known for its customer care and support, built over the past 47 years, and at the current stage of technology and development of technology in the system itself, it's pretty well optimized in the sense that we are offering all the products that we can offer on the current technology platform. The high-speed internet service we currently have tops out at a speed of 300 megabits per second, and our intent over the long haul is to go to a much higher speed through a conversion and upgrade to fiber. What we do offer at the current time, in addition to the internet, also includes Wi-Fi, which is becoming extremely popular the more the number of mobile devices that proliferate in the market. We have a phone offering. We also offer commercial voice and data services to a small but growing number of businesses. And we operate and program Channel 1, which includes content such as this meeting itself, which is being transmitted live, as well as programming including the city council meetings and special content from events around the community. Now over to Keith.
Thank you, Sandeep. So similar to the Stormwater Enterprise Fund, I broke out the cable enterprise financial plan into 2 graphs because of the situation that currently exists with cable running approximately $14 to $15 million fund deficit, depending on which fiscal year you're looking at. And so the first graph, you'll see again the revenues and expenditures. You'll see the estimated actual, and then into the budget year, and then going into the financial forecast. And so I will say on the fiscal year 18-19 estimated actual column, in my Q3 financial update to council a few weeks ago, I had indicated that they will be coming in on budget at the end of this fiscal year, and Sandeep and team and I have been working very closely on tight budget constraints and really monitoring all of their required expenditures for the fiscal year, and we still do think that is the plan. So this graph here will be modified slightly to show that they will be coming in on their expected budgeted really small deficit that was budgeted in the current fiscal year. And then into 19-20, it will be the first fiscal year in a long time, I believe, where they're actually budgeting a small operating surplus. And so on the next slide, I will show you I'll show you the actual numbers for that. But just focusing on the financial forecast for a moment, the top graph just shows very, very gradual sort of course correcting, where the revenues in the out years will then slightly exceed the expenditures very slightly. The takeaway on this is that the ongoing expected revenue increases from the cable department recently implementing their new rate card and focusing on some higher margin internet-based businesses. That will be enough to cover the annual operating, cost of living adjustments or step increases, pension, healthcare costs, CPI, cost increases on their contracts, things like that. It will be enough to cover that, and really only that through the out years. The bottom graph shows the impact of the fund balance. So it shows the fund balance hovering between the $15 to $16 million negative fund balance range. I also want to highlight here that in the 1920 proposed budget, we are removing the equity transfer from the cable enterprise into the general fund. That was planned during this current fiscal year budget as well. It was planned that in the 1920 budget, we would try to eliminate the equity transfer, and we have done that as well.
I'm sorry, Keith, really quick, can you go back? Again, as we said before, we've stopped digging the hole and we're developing the game plan and working on the business plan to dig our way out. With this, I think it's important to note that when you look back 10 to 15 years, the city did receive money from the cable enterprise when the cable enterprise was doing well. And those were legal transfers, and those helped out the general fund. You could also say, well, if that roughly $10 million the cable fund would have kept, would they have this level of a debt service payment? And so, while yes, this is a loan, while yes, it's due to the general fund, the cable fund has been contributing to the general fund to help out the general fund over a number of years, going back 10 years or more. And I do think that that's an important data point that we all need to be cognizant of. But the plan to reduce the equity transfer is because until this fund can get healthy enough to start paying back, if you keep the equity transfer, you're essentially giving the general fund money and then increasing the loan balance at the same time. And that is something that we needed to wean ourselves off of until the fund can get back healthy and start to repay back the loan, and the business plan process can go forward.
Through the chair, on this slide, can you repeat what you said was included in the anticipated expenditures? You said it only accounted
Sure.
for a few things. And
Yeah, so for the enterprise funds, included in the financial forecast on the expenditure side, I included in a rate increase assumption for personnel expenses, so that would be salary increases that would occur, fringe benefits, medical, healthcare, pension costs, those would be included throughout all the financial forecast projections, as well as like a CPI indexing assumption for materials and supplies and contracts. A lot of our contracts have inflator, assumptions where the cost goes up. So that's sort of the baseline increases in the financial plan on the expenditure side, and then any known other expenditures, like if there are known capital projects that would impact. For example, in the cable enterprise, we entered into the router lease purchase agreement, where that project has been implemented now, but we will be paying an annual lease purchase debt service basically back to the general fund of about $352,000 annually over the next 5 years. So I've incorporated that cost into the financial forecast as well. So any known expenses that I know of, I've baked into the model.
Okay, and because cable has typically very expensive technology refreshes that occur periodically, would it make sense to have that built into that ongoing operational expense rather than treating it as a capital improvement thing that we have to fund? We know they come up, we know we need to keep up, so maybe baking something into there so that we're funding that or building up a balance that we can use for that. Would that make sense?
Sure.
In this case?
Sure, so there's two parts to respond to that question. The first one is that the cable enterprise does have projects in the capital improvement program budget. So there are projects for some equipment upgrades and refreshing. And so that the impact of the CIP budget is included in the financial forecast. And then as part of the cable enterprise's business plan, as part of sustaining fiscal solvency in the fund, it's making sure that we're retaining enough funding in the fund to cover a reserve, to cover enough money for their equipment purchases, to cover enough money for their vehicle purchases, for any of the things that they need to maybe purchase on a 10, 15-year cycle. We want to make sure that they have enough money in the fund to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other- Okay, so then going on to the next slide, in the fiscal year 1920 budget, I guess maybe it's first I should note here that you'll see a pretty large change from the ending fund balance in the 1819 amended budget into what we're estimating as the estimated actual in 1819. And there is an adjustment that we're making to the fiber to the home, the citywide fiber to the home project in the CIP budget. That was approved by council in the 1819, the current fiscal year budget. But as we know, there's no dedicated or no identified funding source to implement that project right now. So in the city manager's proposed 1920 budget, we are defunding that project. And when and if there's funding that's identified to implement the citywide fiber to the home project, we would come back to city council, whether it's through the annual budget process or through some other separate request, to request both the revenue and the expenditure appropriation at that time. So that's why you see a pretty dramatic change on the ending fund balance in 1819 into 1920, because we're defunding that capital project. If you look at the 1920 proposed budget, you'll see that it starts with an ending fund balance of negative 15.6 million. The total revenues coming in exceed total operating expenditures, showing a slight operating surplus in the fund, which is a good sign. And then when you add on additional equipment that's expected and the annual lease purchase cost of $350,000, it brings it back down to negative. The way that we structured the lease purchase payback to the general fund was that it would depend on how the enterprise fund performs at the end of the fiscal year. It's not a requirement that they have to pay us back, the general fund back annually, but we want to budget that so that we can plan for that.
Through the chair, thank you. So our revenue projections then, I know at one time we were assuming that fiber to the home would be the catalyst to generating more revenue. So what we saw on the previous slide with the revenue going up, that's sort of taking away the assumption that fiber to the home would be part of it, or is that still an assumption in there?
Our revenue projections do not assume fiber to the home at all at this time. These projections, if anything, are extremely conservative because they're just a few hundred subscribers more than what we have today.
The the business plan scenarios do assume fiber to the home. And so we need to continue to work on that and find a funding source for that project.
Question, okay.
Some of our accomplishments to date. We have introduced a new rate card with a new set of packages, new pricing, pretty much bringing us in line and in many cases leading this local market. We have a new look and feel. We have updated the TV guide to 16,000 set-top boxes. We have a new channel lineup which include Chinese, Filipino, and Korean channels in our basic package, which now is also included with an internet offering. So thereby addressing some aspect of diversity which is present in the marketplace. We already have Hispanic channels available there. We have one of the lowest cost phone services available in the whole of the Bay Area, if not California or the country, at $7.50 a month. We have increased the capacity of the internet or the connection to the public internet that we have at our backend, and this has been accomplished through the completion of the router project. We have or will soon have a new logo and a new name, and we have commenced limited tactical marketing in the marketplace. We have changed our card processor. We have a 30% savings, 59% savings on the phone cost that we pay, and 52% savings on our network monitoring costs. Our Channel 1 upgrade review is underway. We have started accumulating information towards implementing a switch from standard definition to high definition as and when the monies are available through the year. Some of the more immediate improvements to come soon include data collection on what kind of viewership is being obtained by different channels in our lineup, so that we can make changes that can positively impact our channel load and how much we pay to programmers. And that is undergoing a slight bit of a delay simply because we've realized that if we put additional load on critical pieces of equipment at our head end, we run the risk of perhaps having a severe downgrade happen all of a sudden. So we've taken a step back, and now we're trying to re-strategize around that aspect of operations before moving forward. Big strategic initiatives that we have in place for the coming year would, of course, include, if approved, the community fiber upgrade, if the financing is approved, and then, of course, the repayment of the cable loan from the general fund. The way we approach it from the enterprise is through consideration of free cash flow and how to improve and optimize free cash flow available from us to hand over to the general fund. This year, we are able to show a small surplus, which we are pretty confident we will hit, in the 1920 budget, that is. And I think going forward from there, we should be able to improve the optimal usage of resources where our costs are concerned, so that we actually generate a slightly higher surplus every year and have more money to give back to the general fund. The Channel 1 update, as I mentioned before, continues to be a big priority. And comparison of the budgets, 2018-19, our revenues, we had budgeted at 10.926 million. We are in reality going to come in at about 9.7 million or so. We had budgeted expenses 11.052. We're actually going to come in about 150,000 more than our revenue, or 125,000 to be precise. So while our revenue numbers and expenses numbers are lower by $1 million on each front, for this current fiscal, we have managed to bring down the deficit levels to the same amount that was approved last year, so to 125,000. Next year, we propose a revenue budget of 9.907 and an expense budget of 9.792, leading to a small surplus of 114,000. The big changes we have incorporated into this new budget is on the revenue side, we have the new rate card and therefore a smaller absolute number of dollars coming from a slightly increased number of subscribers. We are predicting reductions in cable, pay-per-view, and digital services in all those aspects of our business which focus on video. And we are predicting a slight increase on the number of internet subscribers. We do have salary, step, health, and pension increases, as does every other department in the city. Our maintenance expenses in the short term will go up because we have to spend a little more than normal to keep our aging infrastructure still in play. Our recent renegotiations have been factored in, and these bring cost savings, and we continue to focus on such savings going forward so that we can generate a little more of a surplus when opportunity presents itself. The equity transfer, as the city manager and Keith had mentioned, have been removed going forward, and we just see it as flowing back into the general fund as and when there's free cash flow. Our vehicle fleet is aging, but we have decided to hold off on replacing anything at the current time till such time we can actually generate enough revenues to fund those purchases. To refresh the fiber to the home performance to date, a year and a half ago, we completed the build of, actually a few months ago, we completed the build of Peninsula Place, and this is the end to a 2-year project of a limited upgrade to Peninsula Place, Crystal Springs, and Shelter Creek MDUs. We spent a total of $2.2 million, and we have generated to date a $2 million annual revenue number. So this represents a 26% growth in what we had going in. So we're going to net out on the money we have spent here very shortly. Our performance has been pretty impressive in these MDU complexes. We have a penetration of about 68%, and while it's difficult to imagine a similar percentage of penetration across the entire footprint of the town, we should be getting a much higher level than we currently have, if we were to go all fiber, that is. Yeah. This brings me to the end of my presentation. Any questions, I would be more than happy to answer.
Question for the director, staff? Ivy?
Through the chair, I got a couple of questions.
Laura?
One of the goals and objectives for 2019-20 is to reduce customer complaints due to technical faults. Do you have historical data on that?
We have some data.
Okay.
We are trying to improve the quality of that data. What we currently have is the number of truck rolls and what we budget versus what we actually see. We have currently budgeted about 200 truck rolls a month. We end up pretty close to that number, and much of the truck rolls are due to faults in the system itself, which, a process of diagnosis pretty quickly leads us to figure out whether it's a failing tap or a node which we have to go out and replace. And these changes are good in the short term because it positively impacts the performance of that particular node or that particular tap. But they're increasingly happening across the system, putting a strain on our resources and therefore increasing the number of truck rolls.
And I'd be interested to see the stats on everything, whether it's a phone call into the customer service during business hours or whether it's a phone call after hours, because those all participate in the overall performance and service, whether or not we want to keep our customers or continue to keep them, right? Like, I just think that San Bruno offers an amazing program. It's service that you can get in San Bruno. I can walk into San Bruno Cable and get great customer service, and they continue to do that. So, if we can, and eventually approve a business plan to move forward into fiber, then we have this great gem in the city. And so it would be good to have something in place to start tracking that, to see that. The other question I have is, do you send surveys like the police department? It would be interesting to see if we can get something out on a regular basis to really ask our residents for their feedback, and we might find good information that exists that we didn't know about. And do we have a social media page? I mean, I just think we have an opportunity of what we've done here at Peninsula Place and Crystal Springs and different things, that we could start promoting that new logo and those things and start promoting our business. So just a suggestion. And then finally, I just want to comment on the cost savings from the credit cards to the phone services and the network operations vendor, that it's a breath of fresh air. You've done a fabulous job this past year. So thank you so much for your hard work.
Thank you.
Marnie? And then Irene?
Yes, just did a little math here. Just by renegotiating the contracts, $1.3 million. I mean, that's spectacular. I look forward to seeing the funding plan, and it's such a potential there, and we can't change the past, and I'm just glad we're in this spot now that hopefully we can take advantage of it and move quickly and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question. Do you have a timeline for the business plan? Are you halfway through? What are you looking to present it to us?
So the business plan is complete, and that was presented before you. It really hinges on the fiber to the home project, and so we are actively working on ways to fund that $12.3 million cost of that project, and we need to do that expeditiously. And so we are working on that. We hope to return to council with something. I personally, we're at a crossroads with the enterprise, and we said that earlier. Staying in the business and getting out of the business has real implications for our employees in the cable department. And so it is a significant undertaking, and I think we have somewhere between 12 to 24 months to really figure out a path forward. And I don't want to put a hard month on it because I know it has significant implications, but we've been fairly candid with our staff that we're at a crossroads, and we have a plan to go forward. Now we're working on executing that plan.
Okay, thank you. I misspoke earlier, so I want to echo what Marty and Laura said. I think you've done a fabulous job in a very short time, and I'm excited to see how much more we can do.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll move on to the internal service funds. First one up is central garage.
So I'll turn it over to Jimmy in just a moment to start with the first internal service fund, which is central garage. But before I do so, I wanted to give council an overview of the reserves in all of the internal service funds, in three of them. The city council adopted reserve policy does have reserve targets for central garage, building and facilities, and technology. And the reserve policy target is 25% of annual budget expenditures. That's a similar target as the general fund reserve as well. A minimum, it's a two-part target. It says it should have a minimum of 15%, but it should be aiming towards having 25%. So really the 25 is a little bit more of the aggressive reserve target. And as you can see, in 1819, we fell quite short of that reserve target in central garage and building and facilities. And if you look back historically, there is a reserve summary in the financial summary section of the budget book. It shows that we have not met the reserve target. And in the city manager's proposed budget for fiscal year 1920, we are proposing to fund the full 25% of the reserve in each of these three internal service fund departments at 100%. And so on a prior slide, I had showed you that we were taking fund balance from the Parks and Facilities Capital Fund and transferring that into these three internal service funds. So that is the proposal at this time, to fund it at 100%. By not increasing the allocation to the other departments so that the other departments bear the burden of that, but simply transferring it from fund balance from the Parks and Facilities Fund in order to fund the reserve at 100%. Okay? So with that, I'll turn it over to Jimmy on Central Garage.
Good afternoon again. Regards to the central garage, there are actually less than 3.35 FTEs. There's only two mechanics currently working at the garage division. Currently, right now, regards to the work, they maintain and manages the city's fleet and provides recommendations for the replacement of the city vehicles. And the division provides the city employee with operable, well-maintained vehicles and equipment necessary to conduct the business. The safety inspections are done on these vehicles as well, and provide timely and cost-effective repairs in-house and or by contract. So, as for the accomplishments, there includes the purchase of the 25 vehicles to maintain a reliable city fleet. Staff also completed a new vehicle replacement policy that includes the depreciation and amortization schedule and maintenance condition standards. And this policy will be used as a guide going forward to replace future vehicles in the fleet. The initiatives includes continuing to provide the maintenance and repair of these 146 vehicles that we have in large pieces of equipment. And we're also evaluating ways to reduce maintenance completion time for vehicles as well. As for the proposed budget, the division has a little bit of an increase from last year's fiscal budget. There's additional cost for fuel, parts, and supplies included in the budget. The contractual services budget includes a $50,000 increase to supplement the cost for the repairs of vehicles and equipment by outside vendors for large diesel trucks. And staff is also requesting an additional mechanic position here. So prior to 2011-12, Garage had actually 4 positions, 1 supervisor, 2 mechanics, and 1 maintenance worker was supplied by the street division to help out. And during the economic downturn, the garage was reduced to 2 mechanics. And since 2012, the total fleet size has increased, and the vehicles have become more sophisticated to repair. So having fewer vehicles, having fewer mechanics, have latent maintenance completion times. From discussion with staff, on average, 2 to 3 cars a day are on site, which are unattended to due to limited resources. In addition, staff in the garage performs multiple duties other than maintenance of vehicles. The 2 mechanics are out retrieving vehicles to perform the maintenance and returning the vehicles after the maintenance work is completed. And they also deliver large, diesel vehicles to outside vendors to perform repairs if they're unable to repair it in-house. Staff also deliver cars, to get it outfitted from outside vendors such as Pursuit North and Pittsburgh for police vehicles. And other issues that the garage division has encountered are unexpected, sick time off, scheduled vacation, and injuries of staff. When that happens, the garage division is affected, and it's down to 1 mechanic and 1 staff member during the day for an extended period of time cannot meet the demands of the program there. So therefore, staff is proposing to add a 3rd mechanic, and the 3rd mechanic will allow the garage to have 1 mechanic on site at all times, and then while the other 2 are doing other duties. And this position, we believe, will increase the repair times and productivity and provide redundancy when other garage staff are off work. So this concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions of the director? Laura?
Through the chair. So in order to, there's a need to add a full-time mechanic. Can't some of this work just be outsourced? I mean, I work for a company that has a fleet of vehicles and we have no mechanics on site. Everything gets done through, local mechanic that does a lot of our work, whether it's different companies we work with and we spread it out. We have dependable people that we can work with to come and pick up our vehicles and take them and get them repaired and bring them back. And so it's difficult to bring on more people when you look at our numbers across the board. So I'm not sure where that's at.
No, totally understand. I know that when we first looked at this, there was some discussion in regards to having a fleet program to manage all of our vehicles, and that's something that we had looked at briefly, and we brought in a vendor, Enterprise, to actually look at that and for us. But do you want to?
Yeah. So this addition to, we used to operate with 4 mechanics through the recession. Now we're down to 2. This addition to add 1 more mechanic really provides needed and added capacity to ensure that we're maintaining our vehicles. I think the outsource question is one that we could look at, but I think what that would tip is outsourcing the entire function, not just this 1 position. We have a challenge right now keeping our garage open with the various things that need to be done. Jobs that require 2 people, where 1 person is out delivering or picking up a vehicle, another person is running, and then when you have the periodic vacancies or vacations, the garage is closed. And so I think this 1 position is in the tipping point of, don't have this 1 position, contract this 1 position out. I think if you look at contracting, it's either 1, contracting out the entire maintenance of our vehicles, or a approach where you say, okay, we will do this in-house, but all oil changes are contracted out, or we'll do this in-house, and looking at that. That kind of, staff knows I really, one of my enhancement requests was gonna have a full fleet study to do a full assessment of our fleet, number of vehicles, our whole garage setup to look at these options. Didn't make it on the editing room floor of what was recommended. That was part of the consultancy in the fiscal sustainability program. And I'm not saying we can't look at those at some point, but this addition is to essentially improve the operations of the city, and similar to the position that you'll hear about with building maintenance and the position requests for the limited service and community development. The enhancement requests for personnel are focused on improving the services that we provide as an organization and to the community versus enhancing. For example, that community development coordinator. A nice enhancement, but when dollar for dollar looked at it, you know what? We need to enhance the quality at which we're maintaining our vehicles that we put our employees in and service the community. And so that's why, for me as a city manager, this ended up in the proposed budget versus some of the other items that were enhancing the services.
And I appreciate that explanation, so I guess I wonder if the position can be filled with a temporary employee until an assessment in the next year can be done to really determine what's the tipping point, which way do we really go? Just a thought.
Marty?
So, Dennis can answer that.
Oh.
Sorry.
We have our fleet manager that started walking up to respond to your question.
okay.
Mr. Bosch?
I'll let him.
Mr. Mayor and Council, for the skills necessary for a temporary to do the work and all of the different kinds of work and all the different machinery, they're just not out there. We did have one temporary, and it has been brought up before, you know, could we have someone as a runner, or could we fill in? Some of these vehicles that you've seen are very big, they're very technical, and we did have a temporary come in, and he was unable to fulfill that role. So this position, we're just trying to get back to where we were 30 years ago. And so there has been times where basically we were down to one guy because someone was off or someone was had surgery, and basically garage wasn't open, and other departments were coming in going, hey, we need something looked at, we need something assessed, and you know, so that you know no one got hurt. We're like, you're gonna have to park the car, and we'll get back to you when we get somebody back. So in the sense of the skills necessary and for what we pay, or what would be paid to a temporary, they're just not out there. And so that's why it's being proposed.
And so I almost wonder if the one person actually makes a difference, right? I mean, does it still kind of leave you somewhat in that situation based on vacations, illnesses, injuries, whatnot? So, because it's a physical job, right? It's not something that's easy.
So the answer to the question is yes, because if you look at it basically, and going back again like 30 years, you have basically three people. There's, what we have was technically like a supervisor that did some, and one of these people does have the ability and is part of the planning of the maintenance and calls the other departments to line up the maintenance schedules. And so basically that's the three. The fourth person was a person that, much like there's been brought up before, could you have a runner? We would grab a maintenance worker when we need something to be either helped out, or the department themselves, much like in the police department, the CSOs can help bring the cars. Even if we had a runner, it would be like, you'd have to wait there and then wait till the car's done and then go do something. So it's basically, we fill in when we can, but we're keeping guys busy because there's other work to be done.
Great. Thank you for the explanation.
Marty?
So I'm looking at the page 223, and the contract work is pretty specialized when it's body work or alignments. And so the oil changes are done where? Is it over to one of the local vendors
Oil changes are done in the courtyard.
in the courtyard?
Yes.
And that's, just curious, that's cost effective to do an oil change?
There's also timing of when we say that if we were to farm something out, then you have to make sure that the shop that you're hypothetically going to has the availability and time to work on your things. A lot of times, much I know of other fleet managers that fight with this, is if you're bringing your stuff to a private provider for mechanics, they're also not only just doing your stuff, they're doing their other clients. And so you maybe become I don't want to say a more important client over time, but it takes time to build that. And so they are obviously working at their cost, and then you have to still get the vehicles over to them, and then you have to pick them up. There's a lot of the moving parts that are part of it. So
I'll share with you when I was an employee there in San Bruno, I would bring my private vehicle to AJ on the corner next to the parking lot, right? And he would drive my car over to the city parking lot, and it was done. It was just a really kind of in and up and down. get it dropped off, delivered. Just exploring different ways, and we seem to have thought some of those through. It just seems like we have plenty of automotive repair shops that seem that could help out with that load. Probably still would need that person, maybe not, I'm not sure. But I'd like to see that we've kind of exhausted our efforts to find ways to do things a little differently.
City manager? No.
Thank you.
Let's move on to building and facilities, please.
Joanne McGreeny, Community Services Director. The Building and Facilities Division is made up of 8.05 full-time staff. Again, we'll debate that later. And I just want to remind you, a portion of myself, as well as the executive assistant and accounts and customer services representative go towards this total. There is one field supervisor for this division overseeing one lead custodian and 4 other custodians, for a total of 5 custodians responsible for cleaning 12 city facilities, several of which are used heavily on a daily basis by residents, and 1.5 facility maintenance technicians responsible for the maintenance of 17 city facilities, which have responded to over 1,300 work orders this past year. Buildings and Facilities works closely and collaborates across departments within the city. In collaboration with Public Works, a new deck was installed at the Senior Center. The new deck project included bench seating, a fantastic amenity for the users. The city also embarked on a project upgrading all light fixtures with LED bulbs to help reduce energy costs. This project has just a few fixtures left to change over, but is about 95% complete. Staff coordinated the roof replacement project at Fire Station 52 and found a way to connect the library generator to the City Hall's unit for a major cost savings. The generator hookup has been successful during 2 recent power outages. One of the strategic initiatives that buildings and facility staff will implement this coming fiscal year is in compliance with the ADA transition plan at all city facilities and buildings. Staff have already identified what different areas will be addressed from years 1 to 15 and have put together an implementation plan for years 1 to 3. Some of the accessibility issues that will be addressed in year 1 include adjusting door closures, installing tread stripping, securing door mats at entrances to buildings, adding necessary signage, and increasing playground fiber at city parks. Staff are currently conducting a facility needs assessment for all city buildings. We will formulate a list of needs from structure repairs, carpet replacement, roof repairs, painting needs, and much more. The police department, library, and the cable facility at Arbor Court have all have dilapidated HVAC systems. In addition to the failing HVAC systems, a large number of roof repairs occurred over the past few months. These patches at several city facilities, including the Senior Center, the Rec Center, and Fire Station 51, alleviated the initial leaks, but the water is just finding a new path of entry. One facility that is in dire need of a roof replacement is at the police department. The leaks in that facility have caused major damage to carpet, baseboards, walls, and ceiling tiles. Staff often have to reconfigure their office space during a storm in order to operate. Notable changes to the budget include increased costs for janitorial and maintenance supplies, as well as uniform and safety items. There are also notable cost increase for the HVAC software maintenance and testing for the unit at City Hall. And there are also enhancement requests for year 1 of the ADA transition plan for all city parks and facilities, as well as annual fire alarm and sprinkler inspection and maintenance. One of the budget enhancement requests this year is for the addition of a Parks and Facilities Service Manager position. This role is paramount in the success of our ability to deliver quality and timely repairs, improve and schedule routine maintenance, proactively address aging facility needs, and oversee the delivery of multiple CIP projects for all city parks and facilities. This position will also be essential with addressing the needs associated with the new park at Florida Avenue and the new Rec and Aquatic Center. Currently, staff are responding and reacting to any and all reports of maintenance issues. There is no bandwidth to facilitate a proactive approach. With only 1.5 dedicated facilities maintenance staff, it is difficult to manage and maintain routine maintenance when they are constantly being called away to an emergency repair like plumbing or HVAC-related issues. A prime example of this is what occurred in late April. Within the span of 1 week, the chiller at the senior center had to be replaced. I'm sure you all remember the council meeting on the rare day it was over 80 degrees in San Bruno. The backflow at the senior center had to be brought up to code, and there was a raw sewage backup in the basement of the police department over a weekend, requiring staff to respond and coordinate the restoration and cleanup process that took place over 2 days. To further exacerbate the situation, facility staff share a vehicle and tools, making it difficult for them to work independently. Further, there is limited capacity to efficiently oversee general service agreements with external service providers or confirmation that they have insurance and business license on file, which could ultimately be a liability for the city. Another pain point for staff is the securing of 3 quotes for services over $5,000. This process, although a best practice, requires coordination with different vendors to come out and provide an estimate. This pulls staff away from performing their duties. Window washing, power washing, interior painting, and carpet cleanings have failed to be coordinated by staff due to lack of time and lack of a comprehensive schedule for routine maintenance. With direction from the city manager and with salary savings, we have retained the services of Swinnerton, a building project management company. They have been enlisted to oversee the 5-year fire alarm and sprinkler inspection that is past due, the sewer line and floor replacement project in the basement of the police department, and assist with the HVAC and roofing needs, assessing the HVAC and roofing needs at city facilities. In closing, I am proud of the service that staff are able to provide, but with failing infrastructure, the addition of 2 new parks, and the new Rec and Aquatic Center, our ability to support this type of growth and increasing facility maintenance concerns cannot go without addressing. With the addition of the staff position, I feel the city will be better suited to handle the challenges ahead. I can answer any questions at this time.
Questions of the director? No? Marty?
Still thinking about it.
Well,
Okay, Laura can go first.
I'll go first. I have some questions. Happy to see the keyless entry at the city facilities. I think it's an important security feature to see who's coming in and out of our facilities. I know that during the drought, there was no way to actually pressure washer the senior center, but the outside, if it's a simple way without having to paint, but I don't know if it's a mold that's kind of created and accumulated on the building, so it would be great to see if that's even possible this next year. And then with the ADA, does that include all facilities, including this facility that hopefully someday soon in the next will get torn down?
So we do not have to address any of the needs in this facility
Okay, great,
or the pool facility.
great, thank you.
So,
Go ahead, city manager.
if I can, I just want to congratulate Joanne and staff for doing what they can with our limited facilities maintenance budget. When I use the term shoestring and duct tape, holding things together, that really applies to our facility maintenance division. 1.5 FTEs, it just doesn't cut it, and frankly, the status quo is not appropriate. And staff knows when we were going through our detailed meetings with the city manager, and the details were shared with frankly the level of building maintenance and what we do. My statement was, you fail when you don't articulate to me what needs to be done. I fail when I can't get you the resources that you need to maintain our facilities and do the job you need to do. And so I know that there's extreme sensitivities around an enhancement when we have challenges, and we're looking at potential revenue measures, but I truly do think that this is critical for the services we provide as an agency that serves this community. And so that's why it's there. It's not there lightly at all. It's there truly because I think it's a critical need.
So I see this as a three-pronged problem. We have an issue with coordinating the work. We have an issue with doing the work, and we have an issue with specialized work. So it's only getting worse. We're hearing it loud and clear. This has been a position I think that's been on for a couple of years for the Parks and Facility Manager. I think it's been 2 years. We could only put off so much. I'm interested in hearing of how the Swinnerton oversight, I guess, that consultant contract was worked out and how other contracts like that could work, but it's seeming more and more clear that this is something that we'll have to even give more thought to, and of course it's very difficult with our budget. It's hard today to take all of this in, but I hear you. I will think more about it. You know, this is a lot of information, and I'd like to, at some point, as we do come to the conclusion of the things that we want to do with the other items that did not get past the cutting, or that wound up being on the cutting floor of the budget, there's some things in there that I think we should be considering, and the Economic Development Director or that coordinator, I think, since I'm continuing rambling on a little bit, that's really in my thought that that's really needed too. So balancing this all out, I've heard you, so I just want to just let you acknowledge that and hear from my colleagues.
Any other questions, Michael or Irene, at this time? Doesn't mean you can't come back or email or anything else. Okay. If not, let's move on to technology.
All right, Tammy Yuki, our Assistant City Manager, who also directly oversees our IT department.
We have another small staff of 3 people who support an internal service department. These are the areas that IT is responsible for. I'm just going to touch upon a few. IT is responsible for the infrastructure, maintenance, and operations. They service over 260 devices, desktops, laptop copiers, and printers. Also, they ensure that there's security for the city's data and assets by protecting them from threats that are ever constant. They're also responsible for business applications and management, and they work collaboratively with departments to implement and manage technology to increase operational efficiency. So some of the notable accomplishments for IT, they worked with cable to replace the aging network equipment in all city offices to provide increased performance and redundancy to the city internal data network. They installed an improved malware software application on all city desktops and laptops that protect from new virus threats every day. One of the key features of this system, it is automatically updates the system to protect from newly identified threats. IT implemented with community development a soft launch of the online permit system to a handful of vendors. The system allows the vendors to to process and pay online to make it a more efficient process for the community development. And then they also initiated a scan and digitize engineering drawings project with Public Works to work on scanning their as-built drawings. So it's easier for the engineering department to review and look through the drawings. Some of the strategic initiatives, upcoming strategic initiatives is a project that you will see in a proposed project in the CIP, which is a strategic software needs assessment project. It's a long-term project to perform an assessment of all city departments' current software applications. So right now, city has many software applications that may not talk to one another. One of the examples is the online permit system. So you've got someone paying online, but it may not talk with our finance system. So we would like to hire someone, a consultant, to go in and talk to all the departments, do a needs assessment of all our applications, and perhaps work on a project to link all of them together. The other strategic initiative is migration to the paperless office plan. So one of the things that IT would like to initiate is to automate a workflow process for plan checks. So right now, someone comes in, they bring rolls and rolls of drawings that needs to be distributed among fire, community development, community services. What we'd like to do is to put that online so people can make comments online, so it's not so cumbersome that you're bringing in rolls and rolls of paper. The other strategic initiative is to upgrade conference room and city hall with mobile computing infrastructure to improve the Wi-Fi coverage in city hall. So the community and people visiting city hall and having meetings in our conference rooms could use Wi-Fi and it will assist with presentations, meetings, and WebEx conferences, along with purchasing a monitor, so it would assist with that as well. And last but not least, implement a network security monitoring and alert system. This is also a major CIP project. IT is proposing this to evaluate and improve disaster recovery, business continuity, and security technology. The long-term project includes a security needs assessment that assists in improving our current security plan. So maybe a location not in the Bay Area, but a disaster recovery system that's somewhere else. That's one of the long-term projects that we'd like to look at, is look at a comprehensive security plan. Oh, some notable budget changes for the IT budget. Besides the salary step, health and pension increases, additional services for the GIS project, there was an increase in the budget of $48,000 to implement an upgrade to the GIS software project to improve mapping accuracy, upgrade the address database for better accuracy of parcels, businesses, and residential information. Our mapping needs to be accurate. So when people come in and want to look at their parcel, it's accurate. I mean, one of the examples was because the mapping wasn't accurate, that there was a pipe going through this woman's middle of her house, which is not correct. So this also assists with locating our infrastructure accurately, so we know where our water pipes, our sewer pipes are. Additional purchase of equipment for PC replacement citywide. We want to increase that budget, and that budget was increased to $9,000 to replace our aging computers and laptops that are over 5 years old. And then last is review of the Citrix system for replacement. So we're reviewing the system for a better program. One of the complaints about our Citrix system is it's slow, it sort of lags, it knocks people out when they're trying to connect remotely. So this is a review of trying to replace that. We currently are looking at Microsoft Office 365 as an option, and that will continue. So we would like to look at replacing the desktop system. I'm available for any questions.
Questions for the director? Michael, Irene? No? No. Marty?
No, I guess, comment, so yes, the wireless capability in our facilities is definitely needed. At City Hall, you go to the conference, our city manager's office, and, you know, our phones, our systems, don't work as well. The one question I do have for you is, page 241 in the licensing fees, when it says, I'm looking at 6541 account
Okay.
for the fire RMS system. That's in IT, but not in the fire department?
So this was a licensing expense that was previously in the IT department, but because it's a specific software for the fire department, we have reallocated that to
Okay.
the fire department.
Okay, all right. That's about it.
I will just say that the steps, the goals outlined for 2019 and 20 are so important. You know, we think of security with a lot of other things, whether it's the security of a building or whatnot, but our IT security system and how we log in and how we get into the system, and even employees can log into their systems and leaving computers open, and there's all, you know, clicking on the phishing emails. I mean, there's the possibility of major problems for the city is very vast, and so any recommendations that come from IT, I think, are important.
No other questions? Thank you. Is there anything that wants to be brought up, you want to bring up on self-insurance?
Yeah, we'll have Keith handle that really quickly, and then I think we're done for the day.
Keith?
Okay, so I'll just really briefly cover the self-insurance fund. Self-insurance is our fourth interdepartmental service fund. It includes insurance budget for workers' compensation claims, covering medical, disability, salary continuation, and legal costs. It covers general liability for public liability and physical damage insurance. And it also has our budget for unemployment insurance for meeting state obligations. This fund, like the other internal service funds, is allocated across the general and the enterprise funds accordingly. Just one accomplishment to note for the insurance fund is that there were only 24 claims received in fiscal year 18-19, which is lower than the prior 2 fiscal years. So that's a good trend in the right direction. And we just want to ensure that we have enough funding, enough coverage to maintain, you know, adequate coverage for our employees and our needs at a really competitive cost. The budget for the self-insurance fund is shown here. We've increased the workers' compensation line item by $70,000, just based on recent experience, making sure that we have enough money there. We've also increased the general liability premium by a little over $118,000 from our carrier, as provided that quote to us. And then we were able to reduce our unemployment claims by $10,000 in the budget.
Questions of
If
the
I may,
director?
Mr.
Oh.
Mayor, I'm sorry, I just have a
Yes, City
couple
Attorney.
of quick comments about that, if you don't mind. I know it's late, I'll be
Please, go
very
ahead.
brief. So there's a couple of interesting facts that aren't on that slide that I think really everybody should be aware of. That is that the claims liability budget itself has remained unchanged since at least 2010. So despite the fact that I think everybody would agree that claims costs are increasing and everything associated with dealing with claims are increasing, nevertheless, that budget has remained unchanged. And what is paid out of that budget? Well, there are two things. The first thing is the actual cost of resolving liability claims. So a trip and fall, if infrastructure causes somebody's house to flood, sewer overflow, so all of those costs are paid out of the self-insured liability fund. The second thing that's paid out of that fund are all of the outside counsel fees and expenses, expert fees and expenses that are associated with resolving and defending those claims. So all of the claims and all of the outside counsel fees are paid out of that account. And the self-insurance fund budget, as I indicated, has remained unchanged for about the last decade. And as it turns out, the city's performance in that budget has been on average about $8,000 below budget. So over that 8 or 9 year period, it's fluctuated up and down around that number, around the budgeted number, but on average, it's about $8,000 below that budget for a period of about 8 years. So I think the conclusion we can draw from that is that even though liability premiums are going up, the actual amount that the city is paying for claims costs and outside counsel fees is not going up, and in fact has stayed relatively stable over a long period of time.
Any questions? Okay. Are we going to go into special revenue funds, or are we stopping here now? Okay. First, I want to say a couple things before the city manager wraps it up, and if any of the council colleagues have anything to say. So first and foremost, and I know, thank you for the work, but I'd like to have the finance director please introduce each member of the team that really worked diligently to put this document together. I know it's within finance and out of finance, but I'd like to have them introduced, please.
Be happy to. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have 4 members of my team that I've asked to support this year's annual budget effort. A couple of them are here. I have Charlene Hees, our accountant, right over here. We've got Darlene Wong, our accounting manager. Esther Garibay Fernandez, our revenue services manager, and Benji Lin, who's our payroll specialist. I believe he went back to the office to process payroll. So they were instrumental and really a pleasure to work with, and they are incredibly hardworking, incredibly analytical, diligent. On top of it, there's a lot of moving parts putting this document together, and they did an incredible job, and it's really an honor to work with all of them. So I really want to thank them for their hard work on this project.
Anybody else who needs to be acknowledged that has been kind enough to sit through this day with us? But also, most importantly, too, I think it's important, at times a department or two gets acknowledged, but it's important for you folks to go back to your folks in each department and each division to thank them for the work they do. It's not a department that does it, it's the City of San Bruno's employees and staff that does it together. So on behalf of myself, I'd like that conveyed back to the team and thanked to all of those who stayed and were with us today. This was a different format. It was something we tried differently, just as we had the revenue enhancement meeting in February. So there's nothing wrong with going down paths, and it was a lot to prepare for today, so I want to thank staff for all their efforts and work. City Manager, did you have anything you wanted to close with, or the Finance Director?
No, I just want to say thank you to staff again, but also to the council. This was a new format. I know you walked in today not knowing how much of a fire hose you would drink through. But there was a lot of information, and thank you for diligently receiving it and asking us tough questions, and we're really here to serve and implement your direction.
Irene.
Thank you. Could you refresh my memory? We have another study session.
Yeah, June 11th at 5:30 before our regular council meeting is our next budget study session, and so we will begin that with our CIP budget, beginning where we left off at slide 183. Going to slide 200 and something, but
yeah, a remarkable job. Oh, see, 206. So,
yeah.
I personally would like a little more time, and if it's okay with the council and you, I would like us to start at 5, just to have a little more time to discuss what we've gone through, and then and the new information. So, is that?
Sure. You sure? Okay. Marty? Okay.
We will
You have
announce
consensus
that.
of the council to go ahead and do 5.
Duly noted.
Thank you.
Any comments, Michael?
Yes, thank
Please.
you. So, Giovanna, I just wanted to thank you for doing an incredible job of hitting the ground running and putting this together, and also to all of the new staff. I mean, we had really high expectations of the old staff. You guys always step up and did a great job, but I think all the new folks also, they met the bar, and you guys did an incredible job. I know a lot of you haven't had a lot of time to get familiar with everything, but I really felt that you had a solid understanding of all of the the issues and all of the concerns, and you've done a wonderful job in putting this together, so thank you all.
Yes. Ditto.
And I think it's important to note, and I know this probably came from you, Keith, but actually the format being different, so that we're not having to double entry and all this data, and I am 110% all for that, because just because the format has been the way it is, if there's a more efficient way, please, I think, share that with us. But I just want to thank everybody who presented today. They were well-informed, they were well-prepared, and they did great with their presentations, and listened to us in our conversations and our comments, and although we might not have all the great answers, I think as a team, we work really well together. So thank you for all that.
Marty?
Yes, thank you, everybody. It's a lot of information, there's a lot of tough choices, but you prepared us, and we'll be coming back and hearing more and figuring out how we're gonna get through this, so thank you all very much.
City Manager, anything closing? If not, we'll go ahead and adjourn to the next regular city council meeting held on June 11th at the San Bernardino Senior Center at 7 o'clock.